You know what's strange? We talk endlessly about what people wear. We debate tattoos, piercings, dyed hair. We've got entire psychology studies on why people react to red lipstick or how a suit changes how you're treated. But there's this one thing, this completely natural thing, something that grows on millions of men's faces all on its own. And some people, not a few people, but a surprisingly large number of people are genuinely deeply uncomfortable with it. Beards, not mildly, not their thing. We're talking heart rate goes up, gut reaction, real discomfort. Some people feel an urge to pull away. Some people make snap judgments about the person wearing it before a single word is spoken. And here's what nobody's asking. Why? What is actually happening in someone's brain when they see facial hair and feel fear or disgust or just wrong? Because it turns out the psychology behind this is way deeper than aesthetics. It goes all the way down to how your brain was wired before you even had words. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to walk you through is going to completely change how you see these reactions in other people and honestly, maybe in yourself. Today, we're talking about the psychology of people who are afraid of beards. Now, before you click off thinking this is some niche weird thing, hear me out. Because this is actually a window into something much bigger. It's about how the human brain makes instant unconscious judgments. It's about fear that doesn't make logical sense but is completely real. It's about where our automatic reactions come from and why even smart, self aware people can't just think their way out of them. I've gone deep into the research on this, and what I found surprised me. Because the people who are uncomfortable with beards, there isn't just one type. There are at least 5 distinct psychological profiles behind this reaction, and each one tells you something different about how the human mind works. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's driving the discomfort. You'll understand why it runs so deep, and you'll have a completely different perspective on what it means when someone's brain says danger about something as simple as hair on a face. Let's get into it. Here's where we start. And this is the foundational piece that makes everything else make sense. Your brain has a system, a very old system, that runs constantly in the background, scanning the world around you. Scientists call it the threat detection system, and it is fast. It works before your conscious mind even has time to think. In fractions of a second, your brain is asking, is this safe? Is this dangerous? Do I know this? Is this unfamiliar? And here's the thing about beards. Beards change the face. They change proportions. They cover parts of the face that your brain relies on for reading emotion. And for some people, especially people who didn't grow up around bearded men, the brain flags that as unknown pattern, unusual, proceed with caution. It's the same system that makes your heart jump when you see a shadow move in your peripheral vision. It's not rational, it doesn't need to be. It's old, automatic, and fast. Research in evolutionary psychology shows that humans are hardwired to perform what's called threat assessment based on facial features. And anything that disrupts the clean read of a face, whether that's a mask, low lighting, or yes, thick facial hair, increases amygdala activation. The amygdala is your brain's alarm center. It doesn't ask questions first. So when someone tells you they just feel weird around bearded men and they can't explain it, they're being honest. They genuinely can't explain it because it's not happening in the part of the brain where explanations live. Now, here's the second layer of this, and this is where it gets really interesting. Across dozens of cultures and hundreds of studies, researchers have found the same pattern. Beards are consistently perceived as a signal of dominance, aggression, and social status. When people are shown photos, same man, same expression, same everything, but one photo clean shaven and one with a full beard, they rate the bearded version as older, stronger, more dominant, and in some studies, more threatening. Not evil, not criminal. Threatening in the way a large dog reads as threatening even if it's completely friendly. Your brain reads the signal before your logic kicks in. And for people who already have anxiety around authority, around feeling dominated, around large or physically imposing figures, that signal hits differently. Their nervous system isn't reacting to a beard. It's reacting to what the beard means, according to millions of years of pattern recognition. This is really important. The discomfort isn't about the hair. It's about what the hair triggers in the association network of the brain. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. There is a whole category of beard aversion that has nothing to do with fear or dominance at all. It's disgust. Disgust is one of the most powerful and most studied emotions in psychology. And it's fascinating because unlike fear, which is about immediate danger, disgust is about contamination. It's about the idea of something unclean getting too close. And for a significant group of people, beards activate the disgust system, not fear, disgust. Why? Because the brain, when it perceives something as a potential contamination risk, even if that perception is completely wrong, triggers avoidance. And some people's brains have filed beards under potential harbor of bacteria, germs, food particles, things that shouldn't touch me or my food or people I care about. Studies have found that people who score high on what psychologists call disgust sensitivity, meaning their disgust response fires more easily and more intensely than average, are more likely to have strong negative reactions to beards. These are the same people who are more bothered by the idea of someone sneezing near their food, more bothered by dirty countertops, more likely to throw out food the second it hits its use by date. Their contamination radar is turned up higher, and beards can trip that radar. Now, here's what's interesting about this group. When you actually talk to them, when you ask them why they're uncomfortable, they often don't say, he looks scary. They say something like, it just seems unhygienic, or I don't know, it just bothers me. That I don't know is the disgust system talking. It doesn't give you reasons, it just gives you feelings. Now we get to the layer that most people never think about. And honestly, once you see this, you can't unsee it. A lot of beard aversion isn't born, it's installed. Think about the media you consumed as a kid. Think about the villains in movies, the untrustworthy characters in stories, the menacing strangers in cautionary tales. Not always, but very often, they had facial hair, the smooth-faced hero, the bearded villain, the sinister stranger with the unkempt beard. This isn't a conspiracy, it's just how visual storytelling has worked for decades. And your brain was learning from all of it. Psychological research on what's called cultural conditioning shows that repeated exposure to specific visual patterns, even in fictional contexts, builds automatic associations in the brain. You don't decide to make the association. Your brain just makes it quietly over years. So for some people, their discomfort with beards is a learned response they absorbed from their environment and never questioned. Because why would you? It never announced itself. It just became part of how they see the world. And here's something that makes this really complicated. These learned associations don't feel learned. They feel like your own opinion, your own gut feeling, your own authentic reaction. That's what makes cultural conditioning so powerful. It hides inside your intuition. This is also why beard aversion looks very different across cultures. In communities where beards are associated with wisdom, spiritual status, and respect, you see almost none of this. In communities where beards have been historically linked to outsiders, criminals, or danger, the aversion is much more common. Your fear is a map of your environment, not a map of the world. This is the one that tends to hit people the hardest, so stay with me here. There is a psychological pattern that shows up in people who had chaotic, unpredictable, or emotionally difficult childhoods, and it shows up in a very specific way. The unfamiliar becomes a source of anxiety. When you grow up in an environment where things were unstable, where you had to constantly read the room, scan faces, figure out what was about to happen before it happened, your nervous system learns to be suspicious of anything it doesn't already know. New faces, new environments, new situations. They all carry a low-level alarm signal until proven safe. And the unfamiliar face, the face that doesn't match the pattern of the faces you grew up with, gets flagged. For kids who grew up in households where the adult male figures were clean-shaven and were also unsafe, unpredictable, or frightening, the association can run in either direction. But for others, the specific visual of a bearded man represents a category of person they were never safe around, never comfortable around, or simply never exposed to in a positive context. And here's what's painful about this type. These people often know their reaction doesn't make sense. They're intelligent, they're self-aware, they can tell you, I know he's probably a perfectly nice person, but their body won't cooperate. Their chest still tightens, they still find themselves looking for the exit. Because the body's alarm system didn't update when they grew up. It's still running the rules it learned back then. The same way some people feel oddly unsafe when things are calm, like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, some people feel oddly unsafe around faces that don't match their unconscious template for familiar and safe. It's not about the beard. The beard is just the trigger. What's underneath is a nervous system that never fully got to relax. The last piece of this, and this one ties everything together. Humans are tribal creatures. For most of human history, being part of a group meant survival, and the brain developed a very fast, very efficient way of sorting people into two categories: in-group and out-group. My people, not my people. Facial hair has been one of the markers that groups have used throughout history to signal belonging, which means it has also been used, consciously and unconsciously, to mark the other. In certain social circles, professional environments, or family cultures, having a beard marks you as outside the norm, as not fitting the expected mold. And for people whose sense of safety is tightly tied to conformity and predictability, anyone who visually deviates from what's normal in their context triggers a subtle alarm. This isn't full hostility, it's something quieter. It's the same mechanism that makes some people more comfortable in rooms full of people who look like them. The same mechanism that makes unfamiliar accents, unfamiliar styles, unfamiliar ways of being feel subtly threatening, even when nothing threatening is actually happening. The tribal brain doesn't care about logic, it cares about pattern matching, and someone who looks like not your people gets processed differently, faster, with more initial skepticism than someone who looks familiar. For people who are already high in what researchers call tribal instincts, people whose identity is more tightly bound up in belonging to a defined group, the visual deviation of a beard can trip that wire in a way that reads as discomfort, distrust, or even fear. Again, not logical, not fair. but deeply, deeply human. So, let's zoom all the way back out. We started with the question, why are some people afraid of beards? And what we found is that the answer isn't one thing. It never is with human psychology. It's the ancient threat detection system misreading an unfamiliar face. It's the dominant signal that triggers fear before logic arrives. It's the disgust system flagging what it perceives as a contamination risk. It's the cultural programming you absorb from stories and images and environment before you ever had words to question any of it. It's the nervous system of someone who grew up in uncertainty, still running the survival rules they built as a child. And it's the tribal brain doing what tribal brains do, sorting, scanning, looking for familiar and unfamiliar. None of these responses make someone a bad person. None of them are conscious choices, and none of them are permanent. Because here's what all of this really tells us. When someone reacts to something, fear, disgust, distrust, discomfort, that reaction is always a message from their history. It is always at its root a map of what their brain learned in conditions that may no longer exist. The person who flinches at a bearded face isn't reacting to the man in front of them, they're reacting to everything their brain has ever filed in the same folder. Everything it ever learned to associate with that visual. Understanding that doesn't mean you have to change anyone, it doesn't mean you have to force comfort where there isn't any, it just means you can see what's actually happening. And that seeing clearly is always the beginning of something. If this landed for you, if something in here made you look at your own automatic reactions a little differently, drop it in the comments. Tell me what hit and subscribe.